The large view screen on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel, Curiosity, showed the approaching space station. It looked like a giant silver snowflake against the darkness of space. Captain Lisa Morgan stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as they drew closer to humanity's first official meeting with alien life. "Harmony Point Station has granted us docking permission, Captain," said Communications Officer Ben Lewis. Lisa nodded. "Take us in, Lieutenant Miller." She took a deep breath to steady her nerves. After decades of searching the stars, humans had finally made contact with the Galactic Confederation 6 months ago. Today would mark the first face-to-face diplomatic meeting between Earth representatives and the alliance of 7 sentient species that controlled most of this sector of the galaxy. As the ship docked with a gentle bump, Lisa turned to her crew. "Remember your training. No sudden movements. Follow all protocols. This is history in the making." Before leaving her quarters, Lisa filled her silver thermos with fresh coffee. The rich aroma helped calm her nerves. 6 hours of diplomatic talks would require caffeine, and lots of it. The Earth delegation walked through the airlock into Harmony Point. 4 humans entered the neutral meeting space. Lisa, Dr. Alan Gonzalez, the science officer, diplomat Kevin Russell, and security chief Greg Patterson. The room was large with a round table in the center. The lighting was dim compared to Earth standard, and the air felt slightly thicker. 5 representatives from different Confederation species waited for them. Ambassador Zixtel stepped forward. He was tall and thin with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer. His 4 arms extended in what the briefing materials had described as a greeting gesture. "Welcome, humans of Earth," he said through a translation device at his throat. "We are pleased to begin formal relations between our peoples." Kevin Russell stepped forward with a practiced response. "The people of Earth thank you for this welcome and look forward to peaceful cooperation." They all sat at the table. Lisa noticed the aliens sat farther apart from each other than humans normally would. She made sure to give them extra space. The meeting began with introductions. Each alien representative explained their role and species. Lisa found it hard to remember the complex names, but focused on maintaining eye contact with whoever was speaking. 2 hours into the meeting, during a discussion about trade possibilities, Lisa reached for her thermos. She unscrewed the cap and took a sip of her coffee, which had cooled to the perfect temperature. The reaction was immediate and shocking. Ambassador Zixtel's eyes widened. He shouted something in his native language that the translators couldn't catch. All 5 alien representatives jumped up from their seats. One hit a red button on the wall. Alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. "What's happening?" Lisa asked, standing up but keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. "Containment breach. Deadly toxin detected," shouted a purple-skinned alien with gill-like structures on its neck. Thick barriers slid down from the ceiling, separating the humans from the aliens. Through the clear material, Lisa could see the aliens backing away, their body language showing clear fear. "We mean no harm," Kevin said loudly. "What is the problem?" Ambassador Zixtel pointed a trembling finger at Lisa's thermos. "You brought the death compound here. You exposed us deliberately." Lisa looked down at her coffee in confusion. This is just coffee." The aliens conferred rapidly among themselves. One seemed to be checking readings on a small device. "You consumed this substance?" Zixtel asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Lisa replied. "Most humans drink it daily." The silence that followed was deafening. The aliens stared at the humans with new expressions. Not just fear now, but something that looked like awe mixed with horror. "The substance you call coffee contains what we know as Neuroshatter 9, said the science representative finally. "It is the deadliest neurotoxin known in the galaxy. A single drop would kill everyone on this station except you humans." Lisa looked at her coffee, then back at the aliens. "We drink it for breakfast," she said simply. And that was how humanity's place in the galactic community changed forever. 3 hours after the coffee incident, the Earth delegation sat in a quarantine room on Harmony Point Station. The walls were clear, allowing the aliens to observe them from a safe distance. Lisa Morgan paced the floor, while Dr. Alan Gonzalez examined the readings on his tablet. "They really are terrified of caffeine," Alan said, looking up from his data. "Their scans show it's deadly to all 7 Confederation species." Kevin Russell, the diplomat, rubbed his temples. "Great first impression. We show up and casually wave around what they consider a weapon of mass destruction." "How was I supposed to know?" Lisa asked. "Coffee is just coffee." A door slid open across the room, and Ambassador Zixtal entered wearing what looked like a hazmat suit. 2 other aliens followed him in similar protective gear. "We have confirmed your vessel contains over 50 kilograms of the toxin," Zixtal said through his translator. "Yet your vital signs remain normal. How is this possible?" Alan stepped forward. "Caffeine affects humans differently. It's a mild stimulant, not a poison. We've consumed it for thousands of years." The alien scientists looked at each other with movements that suggested disbelief. "We would like permission to study your biology," one of them said. "This immunity is unprecedented." Alan nodded. "I'd be happy to provide samples and work with your scientists." "I'm curious too." The next day, Alan found himself in a laboratory specially designed to prevent caffeine contamination. He worked alongside Dr. Krylnov, a reptilian alien with scales that shifted color based on her emotions. Currently, they were a cautious yellow-green. "Your cells don't even react to the compound," Krylnov said, examining a slide of human blood exposed to coffee. "In my species, neural pathways would be dissolving now." Alan watched the screen showing his blood cells. "For us, it just blocks certain receptors in the brain. Makes us feel more awake." Krylnov's scales flashed purple with surprise. "You consume it to alter your consciousness." "In a very mild way," Alan explained. "It helps us focus, stay alert." Meanwhile, in another room, Kevin Russell sat with representatives from the Confederation's diplomatic corps. They watched videos of Earth that showed coffee shops on every street, people carrying travel mugs to work, and coffee being served at important meetings. "Your species deliberately cultivates and processes this substance," said a diplomat with 4 eyes and gray skin. "You have built entire industries around it." Kevin nodded. "Coffee is important in our culture. We socialize over it. Some people can't start their day without it." "And children?" asked another alien. "Do you expose your young to this toxin?" "Usually not until their teenage years," Kevin replied, not mentioning energy drinks. The alien made a gesture of shock. A coming-of-age ritual with neurotoxins. Back on the Curiosity, Security Chief Greg Patterson received a message from Earth Command. He read it twice before heading to find Captain Morgan. "Captain, we have a situation," Greg said, finding Lisa in her quarters. "Word about coffee has spread through the Confederation. 3 species have proposed quarantining Earth as a biohazard. 2 others want to study us as potential military assets." Lisa looked up from her now empty coffee mug with a frown. "Military assets? Because we drink coffee." "Think about it from their perspective," Greg explained. "We're immune to something that instantly kills them. Some see that as a threat, others as an opportunity." Lisa stood up. "Get me a secure channel to Admiral Williams on Earth, and contact Kevin on the station. Tell him to emphasize our peaceful intentions." Greg nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Captain. The Vextar delegation requested detailed information about coffee production and distribution on Earth." "Who are the Vextar again?" "The ones with the tentacle faces," Greg replied. "They seemed especially interested in how we process and transport coffee. Said it was for safety protocols." Lisa frowned. "Tell Kevin to be careful what information he shares. Something doesn't feel right about this." As Greg left, Lisa looked out her viewport at the stars. Coffee, of all things, had just changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Admiral John Peterson stood at the window of his office at Earth Defense Headquarters. The view of San Francisco Bay usually calmed him, but not today. On his desk, reports from across the solar system showed growing tension with the Galactic Confederation. "The Arkelian delegation has canceled their visit to Mars colony," said his assistant, Carrie Bennett. "That's the third cancellation this week." John sighed. "And the reason?" "Same as the others. Concerns about caffeine contamination." It had been 3 weeks since Captain Morgan's crew had revealed humanity's coffee consumption to the galaxy, and the situation was getting worse, not better. His computer chimed with an incoming call. The face of United Earth President Sandra Hill appeared on screen. "Admiral, I've just finished speaking with the Confederation High Council," she said. Her expression was grim. "They'd proposed special protocols for all human ships. Decontamination procedures, restricted docking areas, mandatory scanning for caffeine. That's essentially treating us like a biological threat," John replied. "Some of them believe we are," Sandra said. "The Mechnar representative suggested we might weaponize coffee." John almost laughed, but stopped himself. "Madam President, we need to show them we're not a threat without giving up our sovereignty." "I agree. That's why I've approved a diplomatic visit to Mary Davis's coffee farm in Oregon. 6 Confederation scientists with full protective gear. We need to demystify coffee production." Meanwhile, in rural Oregon, Mary Davis walked through her coffee plantation with her husband, Doug. The morning sun filtered through the trees, highlighting the red berries that would eventually become coffee beans. "They're coming tomorrow," Mary said, looking at the neat rows of coffee plants. "Aliens. On our farm. Can you believe it?" Doug shook his head. "Still feels like a dream. Or maybe a nightmare." The bank called again. 3 of our biggest buyers canceled their orders after the news broke. Mary frowned. "People are still drinking coffee. This panic will pass." "I hope so. 30 years we've worked this land, and now they're calling our beans biological weapons." The next day, Mary stood at the edge of her property watching the Confederation shuttle land in a nearby field. 6 figures emerged in full protective suits that made them look like astronauts. One approached her, moving cautiously. "Mrs. Davis, I am Dr. Tesk of the Confederation Biology Division. Thank you for allowing this inspection." Mary nodded, trying to appear friendly despite her nervousness. "Welcome to Davis Family Farms. I'll show you everything about how we grow coffee." As they toured the plantation, Dr. Tesk recorded everything with a small device. When they reached the processing facility, the aliens became even more cautious. "This is where you concentrate the toxin?" Dr. Tesk asked, pointing at the roasting equipment. "We call it roasting the beans," Mary explained. "It brings out the flavor." One of the aliens moved too close to a bag of freshly roasted beans. An alarm on his suit started beeping, and he jumped back in panic. Back at Confederation headquarters on Nexus Prime, the governing council was in session. Representatives from all 7 species sat in a circular chamber, engaged in heated debate. "The humans must be contained," insisted Delegate Vorn of the Mechnar. "They carry deadly poison in their bloodstreams. Their very breath contains trace amounts of the toxin." Admiral Jex of the Trillery raised a hand-like appendage. "The humans have shown no hostile intent. Their immunity to caffeine is biological, not a weapon." "Not yet," said Delegate Pelvac of the Vextar. His tentacled face moved in patterns of concern. "But consider the military applications. One human could contaminate an entire Confederation water supply. We must act now." In orbit above Earth, Captain Lisa Morgan received new orders from Admiral Peterson. She read them twice to be sure. "Prepare the Curiosity for immediate departure," she told her first officer. "We're being sent on a goodwill tour of Confederation worlds. Apparently, we're now Earth's best chance to show that humans aren't walking biological weapons." Lisa looked at the coffee mug on her desk. The simple pleasure that had defined her mornings for decades had become the most controversial substance in the galaxy. She had a feeling things would get worse before they got better. Security Officer Frank Collins walked quickly through the dimly lit corridor of Harmony Point Station. Something wasn't right, and he could feel it in his gut. For the past week, He had noticed unusual activity from the Vextar delegation. They requested files about Earth's coffee production, transportation networks, and consumption patterns. Their questions went far beyond safety concerns. Frank entered the small office he shared with intelligence analyst Olivia Martinez. She looked up from her screen, her face serious. "You need to see this," Olivia said, turning her monitor toward him. On the screen was a security recording from Docking Bay 7. 3 Vextar were loading containers onto their shuttle. The timestamp showed 300 hours, the middle of the station's night cycle. "What are they moving?" Frank asked, leaning closer. I cross-referenced with the cargo manifests. "Nothing was scheduled for transport," Olivia replied. "And look at this." She tapped a key, zooming in on one of the containers. It had Earth markings. "Those are samples from the Davis Coffee Farm," Frank said. "They were supposed to be destroyed after testing." Olivia nodded. "I checked the disposal logs. According to official records, all coffee samples were incinerated 3 days ago." Frank sat down, his mind racing. They're stealing coffee, but why? It's deadly to them. "Maybe that's exactly why," Olivia said quietly. "What's a poison to one species is a weapon against others." Later that day, Frank used his security clearance to access the Vextar delegation's quarters while they attended a council meeting. He wore maintenance coveralls and carried repair tools as a cover. Inside their quarters, everything seemed normal at first. Frank ran a scanner over the walls, looking for hidden compartments. When he reached the sleeping area, the scanner beeped softly. A section of the wall had a different density. Frank found the hidden panel and carefully opened it. Inside was a small safe. It took him 10 minutes to bypass the lock. When the safe opened, he found a data crystal and several small vials of dark liquid. "Coffee extract," he whispered to himself. He carefully took pictures with his secure comm device, then closed everything back the way he found it. That night, Frank and Olivia met in a quiet corner of the station's garden dome. The sounds of the artificial waterfall would cover their conversation from any listening devices. "I decoded part of the data crystal," Olivia said, keeping her voice low. "The Vextar have been studying humans for over 15 years. They knew about coffee long before first contact." Frank's eyes widened. "How is that possible?" "They've had secret observation posts near Earth. The data shows they've been testing coffee as a bioweapon against the Archelians. The two species have been in a cold war for centuries." Frank shook his head. "This could start an interstellar war. Earth would be blamed." "It gets worse," Olivia continued. "I found communications about a plan called Dark Brew. They've refined coffee into an aerosol form that can be introduced into atmospheric systems. We need to alert Captain Morgan and Earth Command." Frank said. "Already tried. There's a communication blackout for maintenance." "Convenient timing, right?" Olivia looked worried. "And the Vextar shuttle leaves in 6 hours." Frank thought for a moment. "We need proof that Earth isn't involved. And we need to warn the Confederation about the Vextar plot." "How? Who would believe us? We're the deadly coffee species, remember?" Frank stood up. "Dr. Krelnov would. She's been working with Dr. Gonzalez on the coffee immunity research. She knows we're not a threat." As they hurried toward the science section, a station-wide alert began to sound. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors. "Attention all personnel," came the automated voice. "Quarantine protocols initiated in sections 12 through 17. Deadly toxin detected in environmental systems." Frank and Olivia looked at each other in horror. "It's starting," Olivia whispered. "They're using the coffee weapon here, on the station." Frank grabbed her arm. "Come on. We need to move fast before they lock down the whole station." The conspiracy was no longer hiding in the shadows. The deadly truth about the Vextar plan was now spilling out, just like the morning coffee humans casually enjoyed every day. Chaos filled the hallways of Harmony Point Station. Alarms blared as aliens rushed to safety, many already showing signs of caffeine poisoning. Their movements were jerky, and some collapsed to the floor with trembling limbs. Frank and Olivia ran against the crowd, wearing emergency breathing masks they had grabbed from a wall panel. They needed to reach the communications center to warn the Confederation about the Vextar attack. "This way," Frank said, pulling Olivia down a side corridor. "Service tunnels will be faster." A security door blocked their path. Frank swiped his access card, but the panel flashed red. They locked down all systems. Olivia pushed him aside and pulled a small device from her pocket. "Good thing I don't rely on standard access." She attached it to the panel, and after a few seconds, the door slid open. Meanwhile, aboard the Curiosity, which was docked at the station, Captain Lisa Morgan received emergency alerts. Reports flooded in from across the Confederation. 3 worlds had suffered attacks. Thousands were dead or dying from exposure to what the reports called the human toxin. "Captain, we're being hailed by Confederation security," said Ben Lewis, her communications officer. "They're ordering all Earth vessels to power down and prepare for boarding." Lisa's face hardened. "They think we did this." "Earth is being blamed," Ben confirmed. "The Confederation fleet has moved to blockade the Sol system." Dr. Alan Gonzalez burst onto the bridge. "Captain, I just received a message from Dr. Krylnov before communications were cut. The toxin used in the attacks is definitely caffeine-based, but it's been modified. It's more potent than anything found naturally on Earth." Lisa clenched her fists. "Someone is framing us." A loud bang echoed through the ship as magnetic locks engaged, securing the Curiosity to the station. Armed Confederation security forces would arrive soon. In another part of the station, Frank and Olivia had reached the science lab where Dr. Krylnov worked. The reptilian scientist was sealing samples in a containment unit. "Dr. Krylnov," Frank called, "we have evidence about the attacks." The alien scales flashed purple with surprise, then settled to a cautious blue. "The humans are being blamed. The Council has already voted to quarantine Earth. It's the Vextar," Olivia explained quickly. "They stole coffee samples from Earth and weaponized them. We have proof." Krylnov's scales rippled with concern. "You must get this evidence to Nexus Prime, the Council headquarters. It's the only way to stop a war." "How?" Frank asked. "All ships are locked down." The scientist moved to a wall panel and pressed a sequence of buttons. A hidden door slid open. "My research vessel. It's small, but it can reach Nexus Prime in 3 days." Frank looked at Olivia. "You take the evidence. I'll try to help the captain and crew." Olivia shook her head. "I can't pilot a ship." "I will navigate," Krylnov said. "But we must hurry." Back on the Curiosity, Lisa and her crew were now prisoners. Confederation guards stood at every exit. Through the viewports, Lisa could see more ships arriving, weapons ready. Alan Gonzalez worked frantically in his lab, analyzing the modified caffeine compound used in the attacks. "This isn't just coffee," he muttered. "The molecular structure has been altered to increase toxicity and improve airborne transmission. This is advanced bioweaponry." He sent his findings to the captain's personal datapad, bypassing the monitored ship systems. Lisa read the report with growing anger. Humans were being blamed for something they didn't do. On Earth, Admiral Peterson stood before the United Earth Council, delivering grim news. "The Confederation has severed all diplomatic ties. Their fleet surrounds our system. Any ship attempting to leave will be destroyed." President Sandra Hill looked around the table at the shocked faces of council members. "How do we prove our innocence when we're not allowed to leave our own solar system?" In the silence that followed, no one had an answer. The crisis had escalated beyond coffee curiosities into the very real possibility of interstellar war. And somewhere in deep space, a small research vessel carried the only evidence that might save humanity from becoming the most feared and hated species in the galaxy. Commander Samantha Wright adjusted her breathing mask and signaled to her team. They moved silently through the dark corridors of the Vextar research facility on the moon of Dronex. Getting here had been almost impossible. Their small stealth ship had barely slipped through the Confederation blockade around Earth. "How much farther?" whispered Paul Harris, the coffee expert from Seattle who had been added to the mission at the last minute. "2 more levels down," replied Rick Carter, the team's tech specialist. He studied the holographic map projected from his wrist device. The main laboratory should be there. Samantha nodded. Earth had received Olivia's message just before all communications were cut off. Now, 3 days later, this small team represented humanity's best hope for proving their innocence. The 4-person team used access codes Frank had stolen from the Vexstar quarters on Harmony Point Station. So far, they had moved through the facility without detection. The Vexstar weren't expecting humans to reach one of their most secret bases. They entered a large room filled with plants. Paul gasped. "Coffee plants," he said, examining the nearest one. "But they're wrong. The leaves are purple, and the berries are almost black." "Genetically modified," said Linda Brown, the team's science officer. She scanned the plants with a small device. "The caffeine content is at least 20 times stronger than normal coffee." Samantha pointed to the far end of the room. "We need samples and data. Be quick." As they collected evidence, Paul studied the growing operation with expert eyes. They've been working on this for years. These plants are at least 5 growing seasons old. Linda found a computer terminal. She inserted a small drive that would copy all the files. "They've been experimenting with different strains," she said, reading the screen. "Looking for the most toxic version possible." "Against who?" Samantha asked. "Everyone," Linda replied grimly. "Different strains designed for different species. The Vexstar plan to control the galaxy by threatening selective extinction." Rick's voice came urgently from across the room. "We've got bigger problems. Look at this." The team gathered around a large container. Inside were thousands of small silver spheres. "Delivery systems," Rick explained, "designed to be released into planetary atmospheric processors. One sphere could poison an entire continent." Paul examined the manufacturing dates. "They've already sent shipments out. Last week." Samantha's face hardened. "That matches the attacks. We need to get this evidence to Nexus Prime immediately." An alarm suddenly blared through the facility. Red lights flashed on the walls. "Intruder alert," came a voice over the speakers. "Security teams to level 5. "They've spotted us," Samantha said. "Grab what you can. We leave now." As they rushed toward the exit, Paul stopped at a control panel. "Wait, we can't leave these plants. They're too dangerous." Linda looked at her scanner. "If we overload the environmental systems, the temperature will rise to levels that will kill the plants." Rick quickly bypassed the security on the control panel. "Done. Temperature rising now." They ran through the corridors as Vexstar security forces closed in. Their breathing masks concealed their human features, but wouldn't fool the aliens for long. "This way," Samantha ordered, leading them down a maintenance shaft. They'd reached the landing pad where their ship waited. As they ran toward it, a Vexstar guard stepped out from behind a fuel container. His eyes widened at the sight of humans. Before he could raise his weapon, Samantha threw a small device at his feet. It burst into a cloud of brown powder. The guard inhaled reflexively, then collapsed to the ground. "What was that?" Linda asked as they boarded the ship. Samantha smiled grimly. "Ground coffee. Sometimes the simplest weapons are the best." As their ship lifted off, the research facility behind them began to smoke as the overloaded systems caused fires throughout the building. The evidence of the Vexstar coffee plants was being destroyed, but the team had what they needed. Rick plotted a course for Nexus Prime. "If we push the engines to maximum, we can be there in 30 hours. Samantha nodded. "The fate of Earth depends on it." As their ship accelerated away from Dronex, alarms sounded. 3 Vexstar warships had appeared on their sensors, moving to intercept. The mission had just gotten much more complicated. Dr. William Summers had not slept in 3 days. The biochemist from Boston worked in a sealed laboratory on Nexus Prime, the Confederation capital world. Despite the crisis and blame directed at humans, a few Confederation scientists believed Earth might be innocent. They had requested his help. "Try this compound," William said, passing a test tube to Dr. Elox, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "I modified the enzyme structure again." Dr. Elox carefully placed a drop of the liquid onto a sample of the weaponized caffeine. They both watched the screen showing the molecular reaction. "The breakdown is starting," Dr. Elox said, his voice hopeful. "The caffeine molecules are changing structure." William leaned forward. "But is it happening fast enough to save someone who's been exposed?" The answer came when the reaction slowed, then stopped. Dr. Elox's shoulders drooped. Not fast enough. The victim would die before the toxin was neutralized. William rubbed his tired eyes. Across the galaxy, planets were in panic. 2 more worlds had reported caffeine attacks. Millions were now living in fear, and Earth was still being blamed. "There must be something we're missing," William muttered. He pulled up the data on his tablet. "Humans process caffeine naturally. Our bodies break it down without harm." Dr. Elox studied the human medical scans. "The enzyme in your liver does most of the work, but we've already tried copying that." William stared at the screen, then suddenly sat up straight. "Wait, we're starting too late in the process." He typed rapidly on his keyboard. "Look at this data from human saliva." Dr. Elox examined the new information. "Your saliva begins breaking down caffeine compounds immediately upon contact." "Yes, before it even reaches our stomach," William said excitedly. "Our early ancestors evolved this mechanism over thousands of years of consuming plants with caffeine." The 2 scientists worked frantically, isolating the specific enzymes from human saliva. They created a new compound and tested it against the weaponized caffeine. On the screen, the deadly caffeine molecules rapidly transformed into harmless compounds. "It works," Dr. Elox shouted. His blue skin pulsed with light, showing his excitement. "This could neutralize the toxin within seconds of exposure." William nodded. "We need to produce this in large quantities immediately. Every world at risk needs this antidote." Meanwhile, Commander Samantha Wright's ship raced toward Nexus Prime, pursued by 3 Vextar warships. Their small vessel shook as enemy weapons fire grazed their shields. "Shields down to 30%, Rick reported from the pilot's seat. "We can't take another direct hit." Samantha studied the star chart. "There's an asteroid field ahead. Take us in." "That's suicide," Linda protested. "So is facing those warships in open space," Samantha replied. "Our ship is smaller and more maneuverable." Rick guided their ship into the dense field of spinning rocks. The Vextar ships followed but had to slow down. Their larger size made navigation more difficult. "Sending our evidence now," Paul said, working at the communication console. "Compressed data package to all Confederation frequencies." "Will anyone believe it?" Linda asked. "They have to," Samantha said grimly. Their ship shuddered as a small asteroid struck their damaged shields. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Engine failure imminent," Rick reported. "We're losing power." On Nexus Prime, the Confederation Council was in emergency session when the data transmission from Samantha's ship arrived. At the same time, Dr. William Summers and Dr. Elox burst into the chamber. "We have the antidote," William announced, "and evidence proving Earth's innocence." The council members murmured in shock as the images from the Vextar facility played on the large screens. The modified coffee plants, the weapons delivery systems, and the secret communications were all visible. "This proves the Vextar are responsible," said Ambassador Zixtal. "Not the humans." High Counselor Merix, an Arkelian, stood up. "We must distribute this antidote immediately to affected worlds, and send rescue ships to these coordinates." He pointed to the location of Samantha's distress signal. As emergency ships launched from Nexus Prime, William watched through a viewport. The nightmare was ending, but he wondered if the damage to human-alien relations could ever be fully repaired. Coffee, the simple drink that humans enjoyed every morning, had nearly caused an interstellar war. Now, ironically, enzymes from human saliva might save countless alien lives. 6 months after the Vextar coffee conspiracy was exposed, Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the observation deck of the newly built Earth Embassy on Nexus Prime. The large windows showed a beautiful alien city with tall crystal towers. She wore her formal uniform with a new insignia. Admiral Lisa Morgan, Earth's first official representative to the Galactic Confederation. "Beautiful view," said a voice behind her. Lisa turned to see Ambassador Zixtel approaching. "The architect did an amazing job," Lisa replied, gesturing to the embassy building around them. The first human structure in Confederation space. Zixtel's skin shimmered with blue patterns that Lisa had learned meant happiness, and a symbol of new understanding between our peoples. The aftermath of the crisis had changed everything. The Vextar leadership had faced justice for their bioweapon attacks. 3 senior officials had been sentenced to life imprisonment. Meanwhile, Earth had been formally welcomed into the Confederation with special protocols for handling caffeine. "The human delegation from Seattle has arrived," Zixtel said. "Chef Nancy Clark is setting up in the Culinary Center downstairs." Lisa smiled. The Interspecies Culinary Institute is her dream come true. Teaching aliens about human food while learning how to prepare yours. They walked together to the embassy's main conference room. Inside, representatives from all 7 Confederation species waited around a large table. Each alien had a special protective mask nearby, not out of fear, but as a standard safety measure for meetings with humans. Dr. William Summers stood at the front of the room, explaining his latest research. His work had made him famous throughout the galaxy. "The modified enzyme treatment has now been distributed to over 200 worlds," he said. "Emergency response teams across the Confederation carry it as standard equipment." In an unexpected twist, Dr. Summers had discovered that highly diluted, modified versions of caffeine had valuable medical uses for certain alien neurological conditions. What had once been seen as a deadly poison was now saving lives. In the embassy's garden, Mary Davis walked with several alien scientists. The small coffee plants she had brought from Oregon were growing in a special sealed greenhouse. The aliens studied them with scientific interest rather than fear. "We've decreased the caffeine content by 80% in this variety," Mary explained. "Safe enough for research without protective gear." Her coffee farm back on Earth had become famous. Far from going bankrupt, she now supplied special beans to research centers across the Confederation. Earth coffee, properly contained, was now the most studied plant in the galaxy. In another part of the embassy, Commander Samantha Wright received a medal for bravery from High Counselor Merrick's. Her team had survived the asteroid field thanks to a rescue ship that arrived just in time. Their evidence had changed the course of history. "The Confederation honors your courage," Merrick said, placing the crystal medallion around Samantha's neck. "You risked your life to reveal the truth." Paul Harris, the coffee expert who had joined the mission, now worked with Dr. Krelnov on cataloging the differences between Earth coffee and the weaponized versions the Vextar had created. Their research ensured no one could misuse coffee again. As evening approached, Admiral Morgan gathered everyone in the embassy's main hall for a special ceremony. Tables were set with small cups, and servers carefully poured a dark liquid into each one. "Today marks a historic occasion," Lisa announced. "The first official coffee ceremony between humans and Confederation representatives." The aliens picked up their protective equipment. The cups held a special ultra-diluted coffee that was safe for them to smell, though not to drink. Humans held regular coffee. "To peace and understanding across the stars," Lisa said, raising her cup. 7 species raised their cups in response. The fear was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. As Lisa sipped her coffee, she thought about how something so ordinary for humans, something millions of people consumed every morning without a second thought, had nearly started a war, but ultimately led to greater understanding between different worlds. Coffee, the most deadly substance in the universe, had become a symbol of humanity's unique place in the galactic community.